Hello, good afternoon. We are going to start again with the session number 3, how research infrastructures can contribute to the European research area, experiences from EU projects, and outlook to priorities in the future. For that, we have as moderators Christophe and Linda from DLR. And as speakers, we will have, we are going to divide this session in 2 parts. For the main part, for the first part, we will have Andrea Santamaria, Álvaro López, Annika Chis, and Jens Habermann. I am not sure if all of them are here, but if not, we could start with the ones that are here.
Yes, hello, good afternoon. My name is Christoph Peschke. I'm with the German Center for Aerospace Research. I'm a REACH member, not close to the research community so much as the other moderators. I wanted just in the beginning to remind that the projects we are discussing now, they have a close relation to the European research area. Of course, the Open Science and ERC projects presented before also they have that. The green and digital transition is one of the focuses of the ERA policy agenda, as well as the access to research infrastructures. And they are deepening the area, providing researchers with attractive careers and working conditions and making brain circulation a reality. S3RIs and RIs in general, especially S3RIs, they are just like centers of gravities of the era because they provide the possibilities for making brain circulation a reality and close cooperation between European countries. So I would now like to ask Andrea, or present Andrea Santamaria Garcia, presenting the project New Technologies and Solutions for Reducing the Environmental and Climate Footprint of RIs, F2.0 research facilities. Andrea studied physics at the Universidad Autónoma de Madrid and received a doctoral degree in accelerator physics from EPFL in 2018. She did a scholarship at SCERN and worked at the High Luminosity LHC project studying crab cavity failures. She's now working at the KIT as a team leader for machine learning activities applied to particle accelerators. So she will explain now how to make these accelerators more energy efficient. So please, the floor is yours. The floor is yours.
Here and allowing me to present our project. So before we start, I just wanted to present the Horizon Europe program that we applied to. So it's the Horizon Infratech from 2023. And this is based on new technologies and solutions for reducing the environmental and climate footprint of research infrastructures. So the expected outcome is, of course, innovative technologies and bring solutions to the research infrastructures. The optimization of resource and energy consumption through the full life cycle of the research infrastructures, and increase long-term sustainability of the European research infrastructures. So this is an overview of our project. It's called Research Facility 2.0 referring to, of course, the new version or new generation of research infrastructure facilities. It's a 3-year project of 5 million. And these are the partners, which are a mix of accelerators in the European Union and also industry partners. As you can see, the main topics are particle accelerators, but also computing centers. We will also work on new technologies and on cost and energy consumption of these research infrastructures. And now I will dive into what our project is about. So the challenges will allow me to talk later about the motivations of why we propose this project. So particle accelerators in general are energy-intensive systems, and their number keeps increasing with the years, and as more uses are also found in industry and medicine. You can see that the growth is mainly on industry and medicine. In science, we don't have so much growth in number of accelerators because they're different types. They are research-based, they are more costly, and the technology is very different. But they also consume a lot of energy. Here we have an overview, for example, of colliders. And this is not for light sources, so there's another type of course, particle accelerators, but they are in the 100 megawatt consumption, and the future accelerators will consume even more, especially if we are looking at the Future Circular Collider, for example, which is a proposal of a 100-kilometer circumference accelerator. So, of course, we cannot continue if we do not take sustainability and energy resources into account. The yearly average energy consumption of these facilities is 5 orders of magnitude greater than, for example, the average consumption of a household in Europe. And these particles accelerators can be considered electrical loads with stringent power quality requirements, meaning, for example, when we convert AC to DC, there's usually a ripple that stays, and this can really disturb our particle beam, which is in the micrometer, let's say, size, and they can see everything. They really detect everything. So we need extremely good power quality, and we have very little flexibility in power demand. So more generally speaking, these facilities are high energy consumption, but renewables will only cover half of it or even less. We have these stringent power quality requirements, and there's a limited flexibility in the system, meaning that usually particle accelerators, and particularly in research, are driven by an experimental agenda, a schedule that's rigid, and right now it cannot be changed. So we cannot just say, now we changed your power quality, or now you cannot access that power, because we have a particular schedule that we need to fulfill. Building new accelerators, of course, involves a lot of raw materials, the usual copper and iron, but also rare earth elements for the magnets, and particularly superconducting magnets. And previous work on energy sustainability has been very targeted and very specialized, and has never had this, let's say, more global view and systematic view that we can integrate into a system. So this is where we come in. Our vision for this RF 2.0 is to design, operate, and supply accelerators anytime in a secure and stable way, with 100% renewable energy and independently from the power grid, while reducing, of course, their environmental impact. Being independent of the grid is extremely interesting, also, for example, for partners like CERN, which is why they joined us in this effort. So, of course, this is the vision. We will do our best during the 3 years that we have this project running. And this is how we will approach it. It's a component to system level approach. So first we will look at having more efficient components. This is simple. We know the main sources, like the main energy consumption sources in particle accelerator, which are magnets and RF cavities. So of course there's new technologies that can highly reduce that energy consumption, like permanent magnets and solid state amplifiers. But at the same time, we want to integrate renewable energies, and we want to make the load more flexible. So that means that we need schedulers that look at what renewable energy is available. And if there's not a high demand, but there's a high production, we need storage. So we are looking at short-term, mid-term, and long-term storage. Short-term is usually flywheels that they store kinetic energy. Mid-term is batteries. Long-term can be chemical reactions. This has to be managed in an intelligent way, which is why we will use AI solutions for load management, which will know, it could forecast the needs of the accelerator, the energy consumption, as well as the availability of the renewables, and it will decide which storage solution to use, and also allow for new ways of scheduling experiments. Now it's a rigid, we humans decide which experiments to do. It could go the other way, depending on the power availability. You will be allowed to do such an experiment. So we need to change a bit the way of thinking. We will pair this with digital twins, where we can develop these solutions in hardware with live readings, but without having to intervene with the actual system. So this is a bit of an overview of where our industry partners and accelerator partners come in. We don't need to stay too much in this slide. And I would like to talk about the target groups. Of course, the main target groups for us are research facilities, but in particular, particle accelerators and data centers. Of course, we also have the grid operators, which will have to work with us in order to achieve our goals, and also technology manufacturers, from software to AI software or any kind of software. But these solutions are quite generic, and they can be applied to any kind of other facility in the future. in the future, when we build new facilities, we should take sustainability into account from the beginning. That needs investment right in this particular infrastructure. So we hope, as in any European project, to impact positively into society, and we hope that these solutions can be reused. This is just a quick overview of how we have integrated these concepts into work packages. But what is to be maybe just highlighted is that at the end will be demonstrator projects. So each part of new technologies, data loading, and solutions that we find, they will be integrated in with the different partners that we have in demonstrator projects, which are very important to assess the viability, right, of our solutions, and then to have feedback back to improve. We have just started in January, so we are only reaching our first milestones right now, which are sustainability metrics. If you don't have proper metrics, you cannot count your progress. So we have started just looking at how can we measure our progress in the future. And that's it from my part. I hope that you guys are interested, and please contact me if you want to collaborate. Thank you very much.
I think as before we collect the questions and pose them before the coffee break, okay? So I ask the next presenter to take the floor, Álvaro López. You know him, he was introduced before. The project is enabling research infrastructure services for better use of imaging data to address challenges in thematic research areas, I imagine. It belongs to the topic of TNA and broader and more sustainable access to research infrastructures, which is one of the important outcomes of the area policy agenda. Please, Álvaro, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. I will make this presentation on behalf of the Imagine Consortium, especially on behalf of Gergely Sipos, which is the project coordinator that could not join us today from the EGI Foundation, and from Dick Schaap from Maris, which is taking the scientific lead, and the one that has the domain and biological background. So if there are any biological errors on the presentation, blame me, as I'm a computer scientist, not them. So I will briefly introduce what is our project about with a little bit of background. Our background is aquatic sciences, and the project is targeting the healthy, clean oceans, sea and inland waters EU mission. Why are we targeting this? Well, obviously there is a lot of regulations and initiatives in the aquatic domain, as the ones listed there, because the seas and oceans are extremely important from a policy-making point of view. I want to highlight here 3 facts. Around 50% of the global oxygen production is produced by marine algae. The oceans are extremely important ecosystem due to as they contain the world's largest diversity and species of habitats, but it is also important from an economical and sustainability point of view because it is a source of food for us. In order to implement all these strategies, we or policymakers need knowledge. And the European Union has already done a lot of work in deploying a vast and massive amount of surveillance systems, monitoring systems, buoys, oceanographical vessels, and so on and so forth, that are producing a huge delay or a huge deluge of data. All this data is already being produced and is being stored and consumed by several data aggregators, data providers, and data owners. And we need to provide them with tools, scientists, with tools that allow them to efficiently exploit this data so that they can generate knowledge and that knowledge can be injected into policy making and policymakers and do informed decisions. So with that, we have elaborated this project with the global objective of creating a dedicated platform for AI and AI-based image processing, targeting aquatic sciences researchers that are working in the overarching name of Healthy Ocean, Sea, Coastal and Inland Waters mission. Our project started in September 22, so it ran in parallel with the project that I presented before. AI for EOS runs for 36 months, 3 years, until the end of August 2025. And it's composed by a consortium with 23 partners. We have 4 national compute centers that are providing infrastructure resources. We have 5 technology providers and machine learning and artificial intelligence experts that are building on top of this infrastructure, the Imagine AI platform. And then we have 14 research institutes that account for a total of 12 research infrastructures involved, that are the ones that are depicted at the top of this slide. With this very nice and friendly consortium, we are enabling 5 cases that exploit virtual access, what we call more mature use cases, and 3 different prototypes that are targeting different aspects of this clean oceans, sea, and inland waters mission. We have the first one, the first use case, we have aquatic litter drones for monitoring in emergencies. For example, they are targeting after the monsoon, when there is a flooding, the debris, the litter is accumulated in certain areas, and they need to estimate the amount of resources, the kind of resources to mobilize, the number of trucks, the number of volunteers to recover that litter. Then we move to a very different use case. We have a SUSCAN and the FlowCam, so the second and the last one and the first on the top half of the table, that are working with taxonomical classification of phytoplankton and zooplankton through different techniques using FlowCams and sampling from the sea. Then we have monitoring at EMSO sites of biodiversity, involving quite a large number of research infrastructures, and oil spill detection and evolution through satellite images. With these services, we are providing them with the tools needed to build their AI applications, and then with the tools to deploy these as services so that they can be used by their communities and by the research infrastructures at a larger scale. And then we have 3 more speculative use cases that are application prototypes that are only using our platform to further develop these prototypes, but they are not going to deliver services as virtual access, just doing development of applications. These are our 5 objectives, but the most important part about, is the right-hand side, which are the indicators, what we are already delivering. We have this Imagine platform operational, providing them with a common AI development framework that I already presented at the beginning, so in the morning. So in AI4EOS, we are developing and enhancing the platform. Here we are exploiting the platform. We are just doing the deployment, customizing it for the needs of the aquatic research community. We have these 5 use cases that will be promoted, 5 AI applications that will be promoted as services. These 3 pilot applications. We are delivering and depositing all of our data in Zenodo, and we have already started engaging with them in order to be able to better include domain-specific metadata into Zenodo. With all of this, we are creating obviously a lot of knowledge and documentation that we are handing over to the communities for feedback in order to create these best practices on how to develop AI applications in the context of the European Open Science Cloud, interacting with the EI for EU and the AI on demand platforms, plus an extensive training program in order to build all of this, in the end, the portfolio of operational services, image repositories, best practices, and so on. This is more or less the same picture that I showed you in the morning. We have our use cases on the left-hand side that are feeding their data and their models into the platform. They are building it, exploiting resources coming, in this case, from the EGI Cloud Federation. You see here a map at the bottom that is extracted from our dashboard. And when we move to the right-hand side, we have the data, we have the platform at the bottom, we build the model. In the end, we have annotated data that we are publishing in Zenodo, so rich data sets with annotated data, metadata, domain-specific information. And then we have the trained AI model published so that it can be reused, and we deploy it as a service for inference and for exploitation by the community. These are just a couple of snapshots of the platform that you already have seen during the morning. As you can see, everything is reusable right away from the web portal. And our timeline, where are right now? We have done a lot of work with the use cases in order to understand their needs and in order to help them to start developing with the platform. Why this has taken so long? Because of the data. They already had the data, but the data was not ready to be used for AI. This is why I also said in the morning that we need data for AI, but of enough quality to feed a model, because otherwise, garbage in, garbage out. So we are now finishing this phase, and we are now moving to the deployment and operation plan of the AI services by research communities, so that this can be exploited at scale by the larger communities. And this is done in a continuous interaction with our users that are involved in the project and the ones that they represent from the research infrastructures. This is the kind of tools that we are. It does not work. Well, it was a nice video of well, crossing fingers. No. Well, anyway, let's move forward. It was a nice video where this is done in real time. This is a streaming of data coming directly from one of our observatories from OPSI. This is in the Mediterranean Sea. So the data is extracted from the webcam that is underwater, is streamed to the platform. It performs this object detection with fish species together with the probability, and everything is streamed in real time again, in this case to a YouTube video. Obviously, this was not the stream, this was just a piece of a longer video, but this is what we are enabling the communities to do. In this case, the people from OPSI already had the data, the videos. We have helped them in order to extract the relevant frames, do the labeling, retrain a model on top of that data, publish it as a model in the marketplace, and now we are promoting it as a streaming online annotation, a streaming service for video. This is my last slide. We have covered a large the middle of the activities of the project, and we have learned a lot of lessons so far. Obviously, as I have said, data preparation and manual labeling is effort intensive. The more metadata that we produce at the source, the better in order to further process the data. And the more automated metadata production, the better. So that we can alleviate this work from the shoulders of the researchers. There are already high-quality open-source AI models out there in the wild, and it is not needed to develop anything from scratch, but we need to make these models ready to use for scientists in our platform, in the EOSC, in an easy way, so that they do not need to deal with the technical details that imply retraining one of these models for their needs. Regular knowledge exchange is important, as I said before, and in the session in the morning, we do think that this exchange and validating the work that is done in infrastructure projects by research infrastructures and by large research communities is essential. Our approach through a competence center works quite well, where we gather together all the relevant stakeholders for this particular project, the communities, the infrastructure providers, and so on. And I have to stress also here that domain knowledge to leverage AI tools and to build AI tools is a must. This is essential, and multidisciplinarity will be more and more important from our point of view. Last but not least, we think that continuing with this virtual access method is crucial to enable access to this fit-for-purpose service, because otherwise it is not possible to make them sustainable in the middle and long term. And with that, I have to say that I'm finished, and I'm open to any questions you may have at the end of the session. Thank you so much.
Well, question at the end. So I introduce the next speaker on access again. This time, remote access, the topic. Annika Thies, if Patricia is a dinosaur, Annika is almost one in the EU. So I know her since a long time, and she started 2005 working in Brussels, first as a lawyer for German Aerospace Center also, and in the Commission, DG RTD, where she was involved in setting up the ERIC framework. And from 2014 to 22, she was director of the Helmholtz Association Brussels office, and developed also the DESCA model consortium. Today, she's took over the coordination, changed to DESI, and took over the coordination of remote access, came up especially with pandemics. And well, I give the floor to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me and for allowing us to present a bit where we are with the eRemote project. So, I'm going to very briefly talk about eRemote in a nutshell, try to give some reflections on how the link with EOSC could be or not be, and then talk about the main outputs of the project, which are the information platform and the green paper. So the challenges we address, you may remember vaguely perhaps by now, but we try to bring back the COVID-19 lockdowns and the phase of it where you really couldn't access, you couldn't travel, you couldn't, normally people were trying to work from home whenever possible. And of course, large physical infrastructures who normally depended on university teams coming, being on site for a week or several days, setting up experiments, then gathering the data, moving home. All that wasn't possible anymore. So that was a massive impulse for many research infrastructure communities to see, okay, what can we do? Can we somehow sustain operation? Can we move towards more remote access in the sense of the users not traveling to the facilities, but finding different solutions? During the lockdown, of course, this had to happen ad hoc. Everybody tried to develop their solutions as fast as they could. They called people they knew, but there was no structured approach to learning from others. And as we now see, now all this is way behind us, and it's incredibly, by now, really difficult to imagine us back into that situation. We still see that there is a clear trend to increase and improve remote and hybrid and virtual access to research infrastructures, depending a lot on which kind of facilities there are. Some facilities have moved back more or less exactly to the way they operated before. Some facilities don't make sense to provide a lot of remote access. Others have really shifted quite considerably, and we've in general seen, because also everybody has learned a lot about Zoom and conferencing tools, so the hybrid modes have massively increased as well. So that's where we came from. This project, the proposal was written during the pandemic in seeing how can we learn from each other. And what we also was really important in writing that proposal was trying to see beyond the borders of one community. Yeah? So DESI and LEAPS are coordinating that, but it was really important for us to set up a consortium, a very small consortium, but representing life sciences, environmental sciences, physical sciences and engineering, and social and cultural sciences, because many of the challenges are actually also addressed in a slightly different way in the different communities, and normally we don't hear about it. So the idea was, let's learn from possible solutions which may have already been developed in other fields. Also, the first thing you then discover when you talk with such a broad consortium is that everybody uses the term remote access, and everybody understands something completely different by what that actually means. Especially between the social sciences and humanities and the physics, it's different. So what we try to do is also break down this remote access term into several aspects which we wanted to then look at more in depth, and that's where we had expert groups on, etc. Always trying to bring all the different communities into the different expert groups. So what we do now is to compile an online knowledge database, try to learn from each other, try to trigger this learning from each other, trying to gather data on use cases, on examples which worked. And we try to feed all of that into the data store, an information platform, and also into a green paper, which I'm going to tell you a bit more about in a second. So we did workshops, we did expert groups on various topics. And you can find all about the data on our platform. So eRemote and EOSC, there's actually quite a lot of this consortium you've just seen is also in one way or another represented in different task forces. Here's a list of the different task forces. And so there was one meeting where we were trying to see, okay, what is there a direct interlinkage between remote access and EOSC? Can EOSC as such directly help with remote access? And the people in the room there had the basic feeling at this stage, no. So this is me reporting on that without further trying to give an emphasis on it. But that was the kind of feeling that at this stage where we are with EOSC, and I think that's also because we are in a stage before the EU node has been deployed, etc. At that stage, these people felt, okay, yes, there are a lot of interesting developments, but if we are asked, is there a direct, tangible output of EOSC which is helping remote access? At that stage, the feeling in the room was possibly rather not. But what they then did was to develop some areas where we felt, yes, there is a lot of need for EOSC, and these are some areas where this need was perceived to be especially important. So there's a clear willingness to further engage with the process and to make, as Immaculada, you said this morning, to make it real and to make it more tangible for people. And I think that's the challenge which is now a really important one, and so there's a really useful scope for further activities there. Okay, so coming back to what eRemote does at this stage, so this information platform, this is just one screenshot. You'll find it at the website, I've just linked there. And then you have just some examples which might be of relevance to this audience here. So you have CESDA, a data access policy report, you have data management in medical image analysis at the European Bioimaging You have GESIS approach to access to confidential data. You have this report by the LEAPS facilities on how they dealt with sample shipment, because that's again something which many communities feel is really complicated. So the information platform is supposed to provide really tangible, hands-on, helpful information for facilities who are in the process of setting up remote access and who may want to learn how the others deal with access to databases with confidential data, for example. And there, of course, we have lots of interlinkages with other projects we've seen earlier today. Then there's the e-remote green paper. This is where we try to have a kind of legacy document summarizing what have we learned during the course of the project, what are the kind of recommendations both to the RI management and possibly to policymakers and funders. And the most important thing you need to learn about that one is that we're in the process of setting up a first consultation round where we're going to put it online in order, and we are going to ask as many people as we can get hold of to comment, to look at it, to add to it, to say, I don't agree with that part. So please, all of you, you're heartily invited to comment and to further follow up on that. We would really appreciate all the knowledge already in this room for this. So if we look at what our first findings from all the workshops, etc. are, then yes, clearly there is a trend towards more remote or hybrid access. It has strong implications for the workload of the RIs in many, many cases. That means if now the university team of 5 people no longer come to the synchrotron, then somebody else at the synchrotron needs to do the work which normally the university team coming to them did. So there is that. There's also a potential loss of efficiency if you try to do remotely something which normally the expert would have done her or himself. So there may be, depending again on the type of facility, there may be massive implications on the workload on the side of the facility, which normally at this stage is not reflected in the funding programs for research infrastructure. So that's one challenge. The way the interaction of the research infrastructure with the users is, of course, changes a lot. If somebody comes for a week to set up experiments and direct contact with the people at the facility discussing, then it's a kind of feeling of co-ownership, and it's also failing and succeeding together, etc. It's being part of, it's collaborative work. If you just get sent some samples by mail and then you put them through your screening and then you send it back, it's completely different feeling both for the users, no longer directly involved in that process, and also for the people at the facility. So you become some kind of anonymous data service provider. That is, and then people from the social sciences and humanities tell us, yeah, that's life. Huh? So in some areas there's a lot of experience with that, and but in the physics, for example, that's not life at the moment. And of course, there's a feeling of loss if we go away completely from such a collaborative mode. The efficiency of training of users and staff is really something important. Remote training can do a lot, but both on the level of what kind of skills you can learn, and also on the level of, again, how engaged are you, how connected do you feel with this infrastructure. You're going to have a completely different effect if you do remote training than if you're really on-site at the facility. But of course, international accessibility, that was mentioned earlier today, that clearly increases access for researchers unable to travel for family care reasons. So there are positive aspects. But yeah, one needs to balance several. The potential impact on the CO2 footprint is clearly there. You don't travel. But then again, we've had a beautiful presentation by somebody from the neutron source saying, if I have an efficiency loss of 20% by not being able to have this normal experiment mode where the user is on site and can sort out the problems themselves, if I lose 20% of the efficiency, then I can calculate that in CO2 too, because I mean, we've seen just this beautiful graph of large facilities and their energy consumption. For 20% of beam time loss, I can fly around the globe quite a lot. So it needs to be really balanced very carefully, and developing metrics for that is actually something very important. Okay, so what we're doing next is to have one survey on policymakers and funders to see, okay, what governance and funding implications they see at this stage. And this green paper consultation I just was talking about. And so please have a look at the website, see whether there's anything useful in the information platform. If you follow us, then we're going to keep you informed of all those surveys, and we would really love to have your input. Thank you very much.
Thank you for an interesting presentation. We discuss later. The next presentation is on a new challenge for transnational access, mission-driven access with a huge project, a huge ambition, providing cutting-edge cancer research services across Europe, CanSurf. It's presented by Professor Jens Habermann with a lot of qualifications. He's Director General of BBMI. He is he's on leave of University of Lübeck as head of section of translational surgical oncology and biobanking. And he obtained his MD at the Medical University of Lübeck, received PhD at the Cancer Center Karolinska in Sweden, and had a postdoctoral fellowship at the National Cancer Institute in USA, Bethesda, USA. He's specialized in human genetics and combines clinics, biobanking, and translational cancer research. So you are the right specialist to perform the research or coordinate the project and present it to us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this kind introduction, and many thanks for the organizers to inviting me, but also big congratulations, because I think this is a wonderful conference, excellent speakers, and very stimulating. I will divide my talk into 3 parts. The first one, I will give a little bit of framework in which this CanSurf project happens, then more details on CanSurf, and then a little bit of reflection. And Patricia, you basically posed me to rethink some of my reflections, actually. So let's start. Talking about on a research infrastructure conference, of course, we need to denote that they are ERICs, European Research Infrastructure Consortia, and currently we have 28, which are organized in 5 topic-specific clusters: environment, health and food, energy, physical science and engineering, and social and cultural innovation. And these clusters elect basically one representative into the executive board, which is a standing basically body of governance. And this is shown where you see all the ERICs at the moment, but you see also that the chair is Antje Kepler from Eurobioimaging, who is elected with this consortium, so to say. Now, the life science research infrastructures is the largest of the clusters among all these 5, and which is currently coordinated or basically chaired by BioMI ERIC. Now, in the clusters, it's not only the ERICs, but it's also research infrastructures which don't have obtained the ERIC status yet. So the clusters might be even larger than the ERIC community by itself, and this is sometimes also a little bit not misunderstood, but sometimes challenging in the nomenclature. Now let's talk about the life science cluster. So I think what is important, Patricia pointed it out, there were many projects where the member states basically provided funding on the core budget, but the European Commission through EU projects. And there were COBEL, Biomed Bridges, EOSC Live, EOSC Future. And these were extremely important to bring the research infrastructures together and to align and basically close gaps in terms of topics and service provision. And this has, I think, created a very stimulating and very open exchange of research infrastructures. And I would like to make this point, this is probably underestimated and not made use of it to the full part. What is then started were these projects which are more towards the translation axis, like EasyDoor, where it's about COVID-19 infectious diseases, it's rare disease partnership, but it's also then CanSurf. And these are topic-specific activities, and they are basically supported then by COVID or EARS for Cancer, but it's still the same key players from the life science infrastructures being in different compositions in these projects. So we were operating together, very domain-specific here. Now let's talk about CanSurf. CanSurf is a consortium which is basically built by 18 consortium partners, including 13 research infrastructures, so almost the entire life science research infrastructure community. So we see it at the moment as one of our cluster funding, so to say. EasyDoor is another one because the life sciences don't have a cluster funding specifically at the moment. It also means that it's a very distributed consortium, and I will come back to this. It's overall 15 million euro project, but 9 million euro out of this 15 million go back to the community to support service provision for the scientists in cancer research. Now, what are our objectives? To provide a minimum of 200 different and unique services for personalized oncology, and already during the proposal writing, it was very difficult to describe which services it should be. So we identified it should be cutting edge, not services which are available at each university, for instance. So this is one objective. Then establish a single access point for request services and training. I will come back to this a little bit later because this is very unique and shows the defragmenting scope of this project, like EasyDoor as well. And then ensure that the data related to oncology will be fully compliant to FAIR principles and enhance synergies with other new initiatives. For instance, EOS for Cancer, this is a sister project, so it should basically feed into EOS overall and Understanding Cancer platform. And then, of course, it should be sustained overall after the project runtime. And this is probably by all the ERICs, if you maintain it through the member state core budget, it's almost a given, but of course, to make it visible and functional for the science community, it might be a different scale. Now, to understand what this one unique platform for access means is that there is one website where cancer researchers can go on CanSurf and see that there's almost a one-stop shop for services. And it's categorized in different domains. It goes from disease models, advanced technologies for personalized oncology, so any kind of new omics technologies, biomarker research development and validation, up to new therapeutic solution and testing, so to say, or even to provide guidance in molecular tumor boards. And then on the other side, you have certain digital services, artificial intelligence, bioinformatics, systems medicine, access to human samples and data, clinical trial design. We can't run clinical trials or fund them, that would be too expensive, but the design can be supported. And then LC, basically support and training. So this can all be picked independent where the service comes from the life science research infrastructures through one single entry point. And I think this is a huge achievement. And this how it looks like basically for the science community. So they can basically, they get the call information. And one important aspect was that the consortium went around Europe and picked up the email addresses from all grant offices from all universities. So that basically the visibility and the information really reaches the science community. And then if somebody wants to apply, then he has all the information on that single point and can put the application together, submit, and then gets, of course, further communication through the project. This is how it looks like on the side of the project, basically. So there's a call phase where we select of certain services for this common access platform. The proposal will be submitted. And then we have an evaluation phase where the eligibility and completeness check goes through the CanSurf consortium. Then we have external scientific review and an ethics check. And then if these thresholds basically are matched by the individual applications, then comes basically the feasibility check with the service providers and a decision by the scientific management board. And in the end, hopefully service provision. And to set this up is not easy because it's not one community in one research infrastructure, but it means it needs to go across all the infrastructures which are basically included. And I will not read through this challenge call that we have. It's just an example. So the first challenge call is already closed. It was to support molecular tumor board decisions. The second call is more on understanding cancer on different basically levels. And there will be 2 more calls coming basically on improving treatment and patients' outcome, and one very specific for young and early career scientists. One special challenge that we saw is also that this interface between basically clinical routine and research site, and this is the European molecular tumor boards. And here we build now a European Molecular Tumor Board network. This is open for everyone to join basically, and has attracted over 200 scientists around the globe almost to work together. And here we will develop basically consensus standards. We will provide also services for molecular tumor boards. So what kind of services from cancer might help then to guide decision taking for specific patients. And we will build an outcome registry to track the outcome of patients who have been treated molecular tumor boards, so that in the future we can learn from it for the science part, what kind of services we need to basically come up with, but also helping in the clinical side. Now, summarizing for cancer, it's really a project which shows how we can defragment ERA in cancer research. And I think this can be also scaled up to other disease domains. It's an easy access to cutting-edge expertise, tools, and services across Europe. And you can see here it's really 13 research infrastructures with 150 service providers. And these 150 service providers are not necessarily the headquarters of the life science infrastructures. It's in the community. And I will show you an example on BBMI what that means as a distributed research infrastructure. So these 150 service providers basically offer about 400 services in 10 different research fields, and I showed you the domains. And just on the first call, we received 100+ applications from 30 different countries. And what the most astonishing part is that the services that were requested were basically picking different services across the different research infrastructures and across different countries. And this also means it's a huge administrative part, because it needs to be cross-RI on the international and national level. Now, speaking about it, and this is just an example of BBMI-ERIC, and of course we're very happy that Spain is part of BBMI-ERIC as an observer currently. That might change to the better even. You see here basically the orange dots are biobanks, which are part of BBMI-ERIC, and then you have the national nodes, which are orange squares in each country who are organizing it nationally. So that means if you have all these about 400 biobanks part of CanSurf, we need to interact with them if a specific request is coming in. Now multiply this by 13 life science research infrastructures who have their own institutions in CanSurf. And if some request comes in picking services across different universities, different service provisions across countries, it's a multitude of interacting to get the service provided. So this is a huge administrative challenge, but it was successful so far, and I think we learned a lot from it, and that can be basically made use of. Another aspect is, and I think this goes also towards EOSC, is that all of these life science infrastructures have already, like BBMI, a way to capture research data back and make them accessible again in a fair way for the community. And this is also something where in CanSurf now we align across the partners, have a matrix, which services provide which data, where they go, and which they can be followed up and made be accessible. Now coming to the challenges that we see, despite the fact that CanSurf was really helpful to increase the visibility of the life science infrastructures at the university level, but I think we believe that still the user access programs are still fragmented, under-resourced, and complex at national and EU level, as I just showed. There is also an increasing administrative challenge due to large European projects with more partners, with individual less funding and shorter funding periods. There's also risk for interfering governance structures, also due to different, for instance, new legal entities such as ethics and technology infrastructures. Missing cluster funding affords major in-kind contribution to synchronize and align across various EU projects and initiatives, be it EOS, data spaces, and so on. And the generic setup of research infrastructures is, I think, underutilized. In contrast, these disease domain and data space specific projects basically challenge sometimes the defragmentation process that is happening in these projects like CanSurf, EasyDoor, OICAM, and the coordinator of OICAM is sitting here in the audience as well. So, and last but not least, the direct representation of ERICs, which is not happening in the EOSC association, hamper sometimes information flow and also the research infrastructure engagement. With this, I'm at the end. Many thanks again for the organizers and happy to take any questions.
Thank you all. We have 5 minutes left before the coffee break, so I don't know, are there questions from your side? Manfred.
Yeah, thank you. Just for statistical cases, Jens is from Austria and not from Germany, yeah, just saying. And I have one question for you and one food for thought. The question is, when I look at especially Cancerv, I wonder how this is reflected on the other side, the mission cancer in Cluster 1 in Horizon Europe. Can you say some words on this? If it's reflected, what you do for the scientific community, and if yes, why, or is it enough? If no, what do you think needs to be done? And the food for thought is with your administration process that is so complex because you have so many different sites and so many different services, do you believe that AI tools can be of help for you in the future? Thank you.
Not sure if that, yes, now works. Maybe the last question first. We look into that already, if AI can help sort of also the users to guide through the specific services in the individual infrastructures, but also in these, I would say, major endeavors of topic-specific projects consortia. So this is a simple yes. However, it comes in also with the data, the quality, the availability of data as we hear it in the different domains. But yeah, that's something we are looking into already. For your first question, the cancer mission has a representative in our steering and advisory board. So basically this challenge calls are specifically came up with from the external scientific and ethical advisory board. There are also industry representatives, patient representatives, scientist representatives. So I think that's where we try to align. And I think what is important is that we learn as the project continues also in terms of the requests are coming in. And we also understood that some services which were coming, we don't have the services to basically facilitate at the moment. So this is something where we need to reach out further to our wider community to adjust accordingly the service portfolio. And I think this is very important. But we are, I think, quite good on track because at least the visibility and the interest in the service provision is quite high.
Hi, I just pulled up your website because I thought it was very interesting, and I study triple negative breast cancer, and it's a rare disease, very difficult to find tissue. So when I see this, my eyes light up. But I was actually just on your website, and I typed this in, very, very nice, thank you. But I come up with BAVL 13 as a clinical trial, but I don't see here what tissue type that you can get from this. How does that work? Like, you just contact the person from this group here on this clinical trial. I assume these are banked tissue samples as opposed to blood samples, or if they're both. I don't see where that's indicated anywhere here. How does that kind of work? Basically, search tools in BBMI-ERIC. One is the directory, which gives you an overview of which biobanks participate and what kind of sample cohorts or data cohorts are in general available. This is the majority of biobanks where basically they all send aggregated data into this central search platform. So I'm not sure if you logged on there on the federated platform, which is a much more granular search analysis tool, but you would basically give what you're requesting specifically in a request matrix. This is then sent out to all the biobanks which are participating, which might basically you have identified that could fit basically, and they send back if they have available what you're searching for or not. BBMI-ERIC is monitoring this negotiation process and is helping either the biobanks or you to clarify your request if needed. So if you made a quick search right now, you just might have an overall glance what might be there potentially, but the biobanks to respond to you might take a week in order to look specifically what you're looking for. But overall, it's all kind of sample and data types that can be provided, so to say, depending on the individual biobanks.
Thank you. I will change the scope, and I will have a question, maybe a comment, or question respect to the first presentation about the energy and the green. So I completely understand that a new accelerator or whatever has to be more efficient, and this is good. But my point is also in relation with another presentation this morning about artificial intelligence. That will be huge consumer of energy, especially artificial intelligence. Even accelerator, of course, but artificial intelligence. I was reading in the internet, maybe it's not true, that one single board of artificial intelligence of the new generation of this NVIDIA GPU board consume equivalent to one electric car making 15,000 kilometers per year. And they sold 2 million of this board last year in the United States. I suppose it's not working 100% of the time because it's mostly for video games at the homes. But when really artificial intelligence data center will be running, the consumption of energy will really ramp up. So my question is where this energy will come from? Because you're talking about 50% is more or less secure, where the energy will come from? So the question is, will it be necessary to reopen all the coal power plants in the different countries in order to produce energy, or where will it come from? Because it will be a huge amount of electrical energy.
That's why we also target data centers in our call. It's not only particle accelerators, but we're also tackling data centers particularly. And the type of machine learning, at least that we do, it's not at the level of large language models. Those are trillion of parameters, at least ChatGPT-4. We are not doing that. We will do simple forecasting. For forecasting, we can train a model with the currently available data for accelerator consumption. That's pretty light. We are not doing, sorry, we are not doing big data, trillions of parameters kinds of models, at least us. But you are right, training without any, like training like this indiscriminately can consume a lot of data, a lot of power and energy. So at KIT, actually, we have a team actually tackling that. So now every time we launch jobs to our cluster, we can measure how much energy we have consumed. So we also need to look at the methods of how to launch the least amount of simulations. So we can do active learning. We can do intelligent parameter search so that we don't do brute force stuff. So we are for sure working on that. We have tools for that.
With that, now there is a sprout of other paradigms to build even large language models that are not so energy consuming. You can apply federated approaches that mobilizes compute power that is not in a single data center but scattered across different data centers. You can even use less powerful cards. You can even use CPU cards to build this large language model that, as she said, these are the ones that are energy hungry, and not energy, also water, because that needs to be cooled down. And water is also another problem. Both in Imagine and I4EOS, one of the things that we are doing, actually collaborating with the same team that you said on the energy consumption, is to include the environmental footprint. This is not yet available, but this is something we are working right now, including the environmental footprint of a model, both at the training time when you build the model, how many resources has it consumed, but also on inference time. For example, with ChatGPT, you have this famous plugin for Google Chrome, I think, or Chromium, where you can estimate how many bottles of water you have consumed when you interact with it. And I think that we need to find a balance between using the tools and using the tools with some sense, not to generate weird images or just create some boilerplate text instead of writing bullet points and sending an email, that kind of things. There are applications that are interesting to be used, and for that you can use a large language model that is energy consuming and water demanding, but obviously you need to have some sense, not just to generate a fake image with DAL-E of whatever comes to your mind. So you need to find a balance, and we think that one of the points in finding this balance is making people aware of which is the environmental footprint of what they are doing. So they can make the decision and say, okay, it is worth it, it is not worth it.
Maybe an additional comment. In our project, one of the parts is to assess the whole energy footprint of the research facility. So that will include the data centers. So hopefully from the very beginning, we should have an estimation of how much will the research facility consume, but also including the data centers, and we can approach it directly from the very beginning. Otherwise, I think, as you say, this can get out of hand pretty quickly.
To talk afterwards with a small reception, and finalizing with another era action outcome, that is the interaction of research infrastructures, e-infrastructures, and stakeholders, including EOC that we did already. Now it comes to the hardware, infrastructures, and EGI, also computing infrastructures. And I just introduced Tom Fryer. He's from GEON, a big network for high-speed communication. Very important, but not much known to us in detail. And yes, he will now explain what they're actually doing. And he's a member. Tom Fryer is a member of the international relation team since 2008, and in 2019 he became head of international relations, and now leads a team of our colleagues support in GEON in relation with research and education networking organizations, and internationally active, including Africa. So I think that's enough.
Muy buenas tardes a todo el mundo. Good afternoon, everybody. Tom Fryer, very pleased to be here. But I would like to apologize on behalf of our CEO, Eric Hauser, who hoped to have been here today but could not make it due to a pre-existing arrangement. So I'm here to talk to you about GEON and how we also engage with e-infrastructures, the other e-infrastructures in Europe. We're a little bit of a sort of a hidden e-infrastructure, and we'll come to why that is in a bit. And I'll start off with the what we are. So GEON is a member association. We have members who are the national research and education networks across Europe, the organizations in each country that deliver connectivity and other collaboration services to research institutions, universities, schools, in some cases, research hospitals, etc., in their own individual country. We then work with them to provide services at the European level and to develop them. We work together with them in our principal project, the GEON project, which is funded by the European Commission. And it's this community effort, working together with our members, that enables us to deliver for research and education across Europe. So you see that our membership covers the whole of Europe. It's not just the European Union, it stretches outside the European Union, of course. And it's the members who look after the users in country. We've already heard that, we're a big infrastructure in terms of connectivity, telecommunications connectivity, and you see in the map on the right-hand side our latest network, which was developed with EU funding in the GN43N, N meaning network project, where we have delivered fibre, dark fibre, and spectrum services across the vast majority of Europe, which enables us to turn up connectivity as and when demand requires it without having to go ahead and do additional procurement activities. It means that we can respond to needs easily and efficiently. But of course, research and education doesn't stop inside Europe. Globally, we are connected to some 60, 65 countries outside of Europe. And we have been involved together with the European Union in the development of similar networks like GÉANT in other parts of the world, Latin America, Red Clara, in the Africas, WACREN, Ubuntu Alliance, ASREN, TAIN in Asia Pacific, and also CAREN in Central Asia. And all this connectivity that we have in Europe is supplemented by connectivity we have to the rest of the world, which increasingly is looking like our connectivity in Europe. To Latin America, a few years ago, we developed the first, we acquired connectivity on the first ever direct cable system between Europe and Latin America in the Bella program, which was a flagship which led towards the idea for the Global Gateways activity by the European Commission, which we're now seeing developing cable connectivity for all of North Africa coming into Europe. And this connectivity, of course, is important for general collaboration between researchers, but there are research infrastructures around the world which are of great importance to Europe. In Chile in particular, a large number of observatories, in Southern Africa, in Australia, the Square Kilometre Array. And closer to home, we have the Sesame synchrotron. We've been hearing about synchrotrons earlier today. Sesame is one of the important ones locally in Jordan, to which connectivity is provided through our activities in that region. And then, of course, ITER, working between France and Japan and other countries around the world, all vital parts of us delivering for research infrastructures around the globe. So connectivity is a big thing that we do, but it's by far means not the only thing. We have a rich service portfolio. Security, trust and identity are key elements and are very, very important in terms of the access to the data, ensuring that when people do access data, they're doing so in a trusted fashion, that your data is protected, and that you're being able to access those services if you should, or not if you shouldn't. We have procurement activities that deliver cloud services. By doing bulk orders for the whole of Europe, we're able to reduce prices significantly for institutions, research institutions, universities, to be able to improve their financial efficiencies in making sure that they have got the software services, infrastructure services that they need. And we're involved in various European infrastructure projects. Just thinking in terms of, as a side, something that we don't normally get involved in, but one project that we have recently engaged in is called Submerse, and that is about investigating how Earth observation data can be collected from submarine cables in use in order to provide additional submarine information about what is happening under the sea. So GÉANT is part of the pan-European e-infrastructure ecosystem. We collaborate closely with all of the other e-infrastructures, formally through projects, less formally, including, typically we'll have collaboration agreements and MOUs in place to work closely with them. We're also an active member in EIRG, the E-Infrastructure Reflection Group, and this is to make sure that we're supporting the research infrastructures. So we're supporting and implementing the European Open Cloud. We're involved in the European Open Science Cloud. We're very much involved in that from the governance and steering level. As a founding member of the EOSC Association, directors from the GÉANT NREN community have been involved. On the implementing side, we and NRENs are involved in all key EOSC projects, most recently EOSC Future, which is a key element in terms of engagement between e-infrastructures and research infrastructures. And we're now working to support the building of the EOSC EU node. The photograph that you see here is from the EOSC Symposium here in Madrid as well a few months ago, where we launched or presented a position paper on the EOSC node and also organized an unconference session with EOSC. So we're continuing to engage. We see it as extremely important that we are engaged very much with the e-infrastructure community. But I'd like to come back a little bit to that element of why, just to finish off why maybe you don't know so much about GÉANT. And that's because for institutions in general, it is the national NREN that matters to you. It is the NREN that you will get your services from, and when you need delivery of something, you will go to. There's only one research infrastructure that we connect directly today, and that is CERN. And there are very specific reasons for that. I showed a slide earlier that says 3.7 terabits per second availability of connectivity across the whole of the globe, from Europe to the rest of the research and education networking community outside Europe. Of that capacity, half of the traffic that we deliver across those links are for CERN, our LHC data. So there's a very special case. Otherwise, your NREN, your local NREN, Redidis here in Spain are the people to talk to. Thank you very much.
Thank you for a comprehensive overview. So, looking at the time, we go first to the next year. We are 15 minutes late. Next topic, EGI. European Grid Initiative, another digital infrastructure, maybe also not known so much to us. The presentation is not about a specific project, but the initiative as such and its relation to digital twins, also needing a lot more explanation for many of us. So Isabel, she is a researcher at the Spanish Research Council, and she worked at the high energy physical lattice quantum chromodynamic simulations and developing computing technologies. I think the floor is yours.
That's my civil life, yeah. So here, we are somehow the other white horse of the infrastructures in Europe together with Jean. So we are the good guys, the guys behind the infrastructure that provide things even without you noticing often, right? That is how it is. So I'm Isabel Campos. I was there in 2010 when we went to the notary, or no, actually the notary came to Science Park and we signed on our personal capacity to create TGI. What I mean by this is that there is a lot of personal commitment in us. Therefore, we last these many years. Yeah? EGI, for those who are not familiar, is the consolidation of the concept of distributed computing and services in Europe. And this remains a unique infrastructure in the world. Yeah? The EGI Federation represents the country nodes that form this distributed computing network. So let's say the elements are the so-called national grid initiatives. Meanwhile, we have also accepted as members research infrastructures, CERN, EMSO, etc. So the constituency is very broad. Yeah? So then we have the EGI Foundation, which is a foundation of Dutch law, somehow, which is responsible for the coordination of the core services, the access to the scientific computing and digital infrastructures, the creation of opportunities for all of us to get some funding for research and development, and we have a communication strategy that probably has reached you a number of times. So EGI is about going distributed. Yeah? So use remote computing capacity, access, transfer, and manage research data, and federated distributed computing, which I insist, as of today, is a unique infrastructure, both in grid and cloud computing in the world. We started from the Large Hadron Collider, Compute Grid, but by now, 12 years later, we are much more multidisciplinary. Yeah? These are the numbers for 2023. Over 94,000 users are using the services of EGI in one way or another. 65% of them are people from the area of structural biology, bioinformatics, and environment. Yeah? 14% of the users are high-energy physics. So the thing has inverted with respect to what it was when we founded the whole thing. EGI is extremely successful in Europe. We are a part of 31 projects of the framework program. of those 31 projects we are in, we coordinate 5. These are the 5 we coordinate that are related to infrastructures. Yeah? Spectrum, Embrihapeus, Beyond, Imagine, that was described before, and Intertwin. And I'm here to talk about Intertwin, because I was asked to talk about digital twins. So let's talk about something funny. What are the digital twins, and how do they relate to our usual numerical simulations, for those of us that do simulations? A bit of the historic background. The idea of the digital twin was born at NASA in the 1960s, when a living model of the Apollo mission rescued the mission. Yeah? You might remember from the old news how the oxygen tank exploded and they almost died, all of them. Yeah? So that night they kept the simulator, which is what you see here, running, attached to some old, now IBM machines, and they were able, let's say, to simulate on Earth what instructions they should give to the vessel to return to Earth. And they succeed, yeah, they return. And this was considered the pioneering of the digital twins, because it was able, let's say, to simulate reality in parallel as things happen. Yeah? So it was a mimic of the real Apollo 13, yeah? This digital twin. In general terms, we can say that the digital twin is a realization in the virtual space of some physical reality. Yeah? A numerical simulation is not, in general, a digital twin unless you can prove it. And in order to prove it, you need to prove that it corresponds with the evolution of physical reality as well. So this is a known graphic. So we have a mathematical model that we implement in a computer, and then there is the reality of interest, so the observational data, for example. So in order to have a digital twin, we need to have a way of feeding data from reality into the mathematical model, into the computer, and verify that what we are doing corresponds with reality. And validation is the process to prove it. Yeah? So in my research group, for example, we are working in validation, validating how this corresponds to reality in a number of models. So our object of interest in the framework program is Destination Earth for digital twins. This is a flagship initiative of the Commission to develop a highly accurate digital model of the Earth, so the digital twin of Earth. And there we are. Yeah? So we have to develop a core platform which connects data sources with infrastructures at the level of cloud and infrastructures at the level of high-performance computing. So this is taken care by ECMWF. Then there will be a data lake, which is being taken care by EUMETSAT, the other agency. And with this, the goal is to create a whole ecosystem that I will describe now on how the Earth behaves. No? So in the project Intertwin, we are interested in the first part, developing a cross-disciplinary digital twin engine. So this is this part on the top. Yeah? So how is this going to be processed, yeah? In terms of resources, etc. So this is the project Intertwin. So what we are doing is developing the software infrastructure necessary for extreme scale simulations, data function, and data management, including machine learning tools where needed to connect the different elements of the Destination Earth platform. And we are doing it in a way that is multidisciplinary. What do I mean by that? That our solution is of general applicability to very different research areas, from flood warnings to drug prediction, high energy physics, gravitational waves, lattice QCD, radio astronomy, etc. So it will be a solution which in terms of computing infrastructure is neutral. Yeah? It is not always possible, but we do our best. So this is just a look at the basic architecture. We cooperate with other digital twins to make this interdisciplinarity come along. These slides are courtesy of Arnau Folch, a colleague of mine from the Institute of Geosciences of Barcelona. So we are as well working in making the digital twin of a volcano, yeah? In the DTGO project, which is the other digital twin project funded by the Commission. Yeah? And this has to do with urgent computing. Urgent computing in the sense that when the volcano goes off, what do we do? Yeah? How do we warn the people of civil rescue? And this is being done live, so to say, using computing facilities and feeding data from the real sensors that are in the volcano that you can see here. So it's, these people typically have a network of sensors around volcanoes that have a prediction of when things are going to happen. In Spain, we know very well that it's an issue. Yeah? Then we run a software called Fall 3D. It's a very complex simulation that has represented many years of development work. Yeah? And then we collect all the data, and we are able to simulate how the smoke is going to propagate, and then we can inform the authorities. For example, the aviation authorities, that they should not start, etc. So this is the volcano. My colleague, Joaquin Tintoré from SOCIP, he also reminded me that we are, of course, collaborating in the digital twin of the ocean, which is the other part of the world, no? the ocean. This is in the framework of Mercator. Ideally, they also want to make observations flowing easier into the simulation, and they came up with a very complex architecture, but very similar to ours, if you look at it carefully. So it's, let's say there are the data sources, the engine to simulate, the users on the right side, etc. So in a way, we all came to the same conclusions, no? That we need to put a number of layers and use standard interfaces, etc. And then, what else I want to say? Yeah, some reflections. Since we will have a discussion session now, I thought maybe I make some considerations that we have been discussing across the EGI Federation. Yeah. Obviously biased by my own professional education, which is physics. I'm a high-energy physicist. Physics is an experimental science. Yeah? We investigate where we can. And this is often not where we would like to investigate, right? But usually things follow the so-called street-like logic. Yeah. Which is if you walk back home in the night and you realize that you have lost your keys in the park, then look for the keys in the illuminated area behind the light bulb, because you will not find them anywhere else. And strangely as it sounds, this is how science progresses. Yeah? Because sometimes unexpected things happen in the places where you didn't think you were going to find anything. And this is the beauty of science and what makes it a bottom-up undertaking from human, let's say, in human history. I wanted to bring this quote from Richard Feynman, one of our personal leaders. No? Richard Feynman was a theoretical physicist, but he was heavily involved in the development of HPC systems in the early days, in the 60s and so on, the 50s. So there was this first HPC system called the connection machine. And he wanted very badly to help the engineers to do the connection machine. And then this Daniel Hillis, who was the head of the project, writes this in his memories. We informed Richard that his role will be to advise us on the selection of scientific applications to run. And he sent us to hell, essentially. No, that is nothing. Give me something real to do. I want really to cope to do something that has a value. Yeah. And that is a message that comes to me very often in all these events, and many more. Yeah. So give me something real to do. This is something that all this EOSC and S-free environment should be striving to do. No? Because scientific computing is not just an IT service. It's an integral element of any research program, to the point that the budget for ICT determines the scale of the scientific challenge that can be addressed. And this is a reality that needs to leak into to our policymakers. Yeah? The complexity of science requires a dedicated development effort that has to be funded as innovation. Yeah? And unfortunately, lately, we see very few opportunities for funding real innovative work and a lot of vanity projects. And I will not say it because it's not here, what I consider a vanity project that has been presented here today. Software and computing is a global endeavor. Efforts must be coordinated, not only in Europe, but also elsewhere with the US. I just heard that some signed with the US a letter of intent to build the FCC collider, which is very good news for the high energy physics community, and this will really give us a lot of work in the next years. But it needs to be realized that this is heavy work with rare and expensive talents, and we need to find a way to keep people around. Yeah? And that's all for my reflections. Yeah.
Yeah, this was an almost philosophical outlook at the end, which requires thorough discussion, or stimulates discussion. So questions to both presentations. So, well, we are all a bit tired. My question, which I had to the project, I would almost ask it to Patricia, or hand it over to Patricia, who is giving the final speech. And that is just outlook to the future research infrastructure work programs. My question to many of the project was, what will be the sustainability in the next work programs to support them, like these initiatives like CanSurf or e-remote, which starting a topic at a transnational access team, or even Infratech now with saving energies, they will most probably not be finished after the end of the project. What can next work program do for them? But maybe you answer that in your presentation. If not, we discuss it later. Okay.
I see that Christoph wanted to give me something real to say. I prepared no slides for this part of my intervention today, mostly because I wanted to leave no written trace of what I was planning to say, which is something I think I need to worry about sometimes, and also because I was planning to draw most of my inspiration of what I wanted to say now from what you would all say. I think I now have a list of mental questions that I want to ask to some of you, because I think I've never managed to understand GEAND properly or EGI, so I'm going to just jump on you now to ask you a few questions. But really, as regards what I wanted to discuss, which was the future for research infrastructures, which is the future of a part of the European Framework Programme in the context of the future of our policy and political evolution in the 10 years to come. And it's really 10 years because it's the 3 years that are left of the current program, Horizon Europe, and plus the 7 years of the future program. So that is something quite real to do. But it's really not very specific. And now we are in a period, and many of you will have been part of the discussion of the future research infrastructures program, because you will have been informed through your national networks of the broad strategic orientations document for the future of the research infrastructures program, which was like a first consultation put out there to member states to discuss in which ways do we want to do things just the same, or what do we want to change in the next framework program, because we should start getting ready now. And I mean, I'm always a little bit frustrated because I think that there are people out there with ideas and they're not sharing them. Sometimes I worry perhaps they don't have ideas, but then I think, no, they do, but they are not writing them into formal consultation input. So I really pin my hopes down on this type of events because very often people grab me at the coffee time and they share amazing ideas and I just say, will you please send me an email so that I can share this? So I really encourage you to send me an email after today, and my email address, which is a little bit long and complicated, was in my slides, with any ideas you might have had. Because now we're in that period in which wild ideas can be put forward. And some people are putting forward papers saying we should abolish the research infrastructure program. We should abolish the framework program. We should stop trying to replicate national science programs at EU level and just draw up a list of priorities we need to work together on and focus European collaboration efforts on that and forget about all the rest, the little projects. This is a constant debate every time a new framework program is designed. For me, this philosophical debate is a little bit pointless because for all of you who have been engaged, some of you for many years in transnational collaborations of European scope in most cases, you know that transnational scientific collaboration builds on pre-existing trust. Our human brain requires a previous trust, a human collaborative environment, which is what we've been building across European scientific institutions for the last 25 years since the first framework program in the year 83-84 was launched. It's absurd to pretend you can have isolated national systems come together randomly on a set of priorities, and that's going to spark off and just happen. It doesn't work like that. We know it because we all play sometimes team sports, or we have been engaged in collaborative projects. So, I mean, there is a balance between creating a stable environmental pathos in Europe and then focusing most of the efforts on what we think are the shared priorities. And that's the moment with it. And then I'm picking up on another thing Isabel said about we are there providing the service you're using all the time without you noticing. This is a little bit the problem of science in general, but it is very particularly within the scientific world the problem of research infrastructures. And I was talking to you earlier about measuring impact. And in the case of research infrastructures, it's very hard because research infrastructure, scientific tools and installations are used in a lot of research projects, but the use is not tracked. So in my little team of 5 people, we sometimes ask for, selling points and big arguments and marketing and lines, but we don't have any figures. And arguably, collecting those figures would be so cumbersome and require so much effort. That, I mean, the bureaucracy of that is not really justified. So we need to move away from bureaucracies trying to produce data for everything and just use common sense. We know research infrastructures generate data that are crucial, and we know these services are very important. We are aware that we're not very visible, and this is hurting us already for years when the budget in the framework program is allocated. All the other programs have increased their allocation, and we haven't. So perhaps we haven't done a very good job, me included, in making our value understood. But this is going to be a problem now because in spite of what Macron is saying that the science budget should be double, I don't think this is going to happen. So when we look at research infrastructures and how we're spending our money, we have had 2 main ideas of how we can do things differently in the future. One is how we can provide transnational access. And we've put forward an idea that we should stop funding transnational access through projects. This makes some people horrified because they've been running these integrating activities for 20 years and they cannot imagine things differently. They might have a point. It might not be a perfect idea in the end, but I think it's worth having the discussion now. Couldn't we have a system whereby transnational access to research infrastructures in Europe would be seamless, a one-stop shop, a central point to understand and to see which are the facilities offering transnational access, a single point to submit your application, and then we could see how we operationalize the selection for different fields, for different scientific instruments. Could we do that? Because if we could do that and we could find a way to run such a scheme, then transnational access would be completely transparent to any researcher, even people who are far away from the partners of a particular project, who are not aware of how to find information about calls for access. There wouldn't be gap years between projects. So maybe this is something we can make happen in the next framework program. And this is an idea that we've put out there for you to give us your feedback on. And if you think this is a terrible idea, or if you think it's exciting, I invite you to send me an email and tell me why. But then, of course, we are aware that projects for transnational access have created communities over the years, integrating activities which no longer exist in the current configuration of the program. We're funding instruments that helped us create transnational European communities. So we will still need an instrument to create communities. Maybe infratech grants could be this instrument. But is a technology development instrument what we need for the RI communities? Is this a workable idea for nurturing existing communities and fostering emerging communities of RI users? So these are the two key ideas that we would like you to mull over in your head when you're having a shower or in a very boring tube ride. And we just had a consultation, a formal consultation about this strategic orientations document, and we asked people, you probably don't know we had this consultation, but we had it. I don't remember, it's probably closed now, but it doesn't matter because you can still send me an email or any of my colleagues. We share amongst us this input. We keep track of it, we put it in a folder, we go back to it, we use it to think ourselves, and we will repackage it and put it forward again to the members of the program committee, which are the representatives of national governments. So your ideas are valuable. Please send them to me. I'm giving you something real to do. And we really need to be very engaged, because if we want the next framework program to move forward for research infrastructures, we need to have the ideas now, and we need to start shaping them now, because we are now finalizing the drafting of the work program for 2025. And if we want to run a pilot or a study that will help us shape something for 2027, the moment is now. So all those wild ideas, don't be ashamed. I mean, I will not quote you on anything, but you can send them to me. And I really encourage you to discuss amongst yourselves, to share the vision that you have from your particular corner, from your particular point of view, from your experience with 1 grant or 25 grants over the years, to share those points of view with us. And that's all, I think.
Well, to assure you that we in Germany, at least, we are having many workshops and thematic papers which we'll submit you in the process of developing the next framework program before the first draft of the Commission will be issued. And I think this you are expecting from other countries also. So I think this is a very vast subject, which I think we cannot cover here. No, it's left for the shower tomorrow, as you said. So now it's time already for the closing. Or if there are any questions, I'm happy to. Yes. Yeah, please.
That's me. Thank you. That's a comment for the last speaker. Thank you for your presentation. I remember that era of transnational access. It was very successful. But then it gave us the opportunity to see what is the real picture, what is the reality out there. And the reality is that the communities and also the individual researchers, they are never accustomed actually to use what is readily available out there. Okay? What AGI, develops is fine, but the researcher or the networks, they need, something which is tailored to their needs. And therefore, here it comes, the content of co-design and co-development.
And I think that the example we had, you know, in the morning from the Oscars projects is a fine example if you are looking, you know, for something to change the picture.
Thank you.
Yeah, now it's working. Thank you. It's not a question to you. It's more a question to everybody here with their hands raising. Who thinks that research infrastructures get enough funding in Horizon Europe? I thought so. Okay, let's do it the other way around. Who thinks research infrastructure in FP10 should get more funding? So get back to your national authorities and tell them, because in the end, it's not the European Commission deciding on the budget, it's our governments, especially our finance ministers, and they need to be convinced that we need this funding to keep on going, because what we have in Horizon Europe, I think, is just a mitigation measure to keep them running a bit, but it's not the way to go forward. Thank you.
Okay, with this message, I think, yeah, another, yeah, please.
Yeah, just in response to what was just said right there, and I agree with it 100%. I'm with you. I think that national entities ought to be funding more infrastructure, of course. But what happens to the research or research groups when they don't? Isn't there some other fail-safe? I mean, if you're in a country which just isn't funding the research, your needs or the infrastructure needs that that is required, is there an outlet at the European level which you can go through? I mean, is there some sort of fail-safe for that, or is there a plan for that? Or if you say absolutely not, and it's completely in your country, or what are the opportunities? And the other thing that somebody was saying is that researchers aren't taking advantage of the services, and I would say that a lot of times they don't know about it, and it's hard to find the right mechanism of advertisement and outreach to get to everybody. But is there sort of a fail-safe at the European level if your home entity isn't probably doing as much as you think they should?
I'm not sure it was a little bit muffled, the voice. I'm not sure I understood very well. But I think you asked whether there's a mechanism at European level where a national scientist can go when its national science funders are not doing enough. Well, this is a very vast question. I would say that a lot of national scientists are surviving thanks to European projects, to be honest. There are always cases like this or periods like this for everybody. In the case of research infrastructures, I mean, we operate through a system. We set up an advisory committee called ESFRI, the European Strategic Forum for Research Infrastructures. So for a research infrastructure, which is a scientific installation or a transnational collaboration that is intended to be stable over time in order to provide stable services, I mean, in order to be included in the roadmap that ESFRI draws up, I mean, the support of at least 3 national governments is required. So the Commission is not in a position to add transnational collaborations to this list if there is no national commitment. So prior national commitment is seen as the prerequisite for these installations or facilities to be considered by our program. And you can find fault with this, but it is the only way the process would work.
It is many years already that we are trying to solve the same problem, no? Science is a bottom-up process, yeah? And the European Commission is very top-down, very top-down, yeah? So matching the two angles is very difficult. Yeah, this is not anything that just happens. No, matching the bottom-up ecosystem of research with top-down measures is not working. Very often I have the impression when I look at the news that some people are trying the impossible, which is dictating politically what science and technology should produce. And this is not going to happen. Yeah? Because this is like a friend of mine, a mathematician, says, this is like if the early 90s, you read in the newspaper, in 10 years from now, we will have a general theory of relativity. And this is absurd. Yeah? Science works in different ways. Yeah? And the challenge of our policy people here, and it's very hard work, I say, is making sure that those that the EC takes care of bringing in the requirements of the researchers, but do not dictate what they do with that infrastructure that is given to them, or that funding that is given to them.
I agree.
I think it's a conversation for the cocktail.
Well, but the funding gives, of course, it makes accents on what can the researcher can do. So it cannot prescribe that in 10 years we have fusion energy, but it can.
10 years.
In 10 years there will be fusion energy, but they can say, well, the money is now for fusion research. So that is makes a difference. So even if the science is bottom up, but if there's no money, so then there will be no science at all.
Nice for me. I come from Turkey. I'm the Research Council of Turkey, Research Infrastructure National Contact Point. We have a personal problem for Turkey, because we are not in ERIC status. We have a big potential of infrastructures, but as we are not in ERIC status, we couldn't take much projects, or we could not use the whole potential. We try to now to make it, to solve it, but I think it will be a time to solve it. Till that time, do you recommend us, what can we do for going more projects to use our whole potential? Thank you.
I'm afraid I am not the expert in my team about the legal intricacies of ERICs and third countries, but Turkey is an associated country. So, I mean, as far as I know, I don't know what's the particular situation with Turkey, but associated countries can be members of ERICs. So, I mean, I don't know what's exactly the problematic in your case. But anyway, there are a lot of countries, even non-European countries, that are observers to ERICs. So I think that the legal issues do not make collaboration impossible. Also because you can also, I mean, ERICs are self-funded. I mean, the national nodes cover their own expenses. So I don't think, I mean, there could be some legal obstacles, but not real impediments to the scientific collaboration. So I would say that's the starting point while you wait for whichever legal issue you have, which I am not well informed of, I mean, is solved.
We have Turkey in EGI. And your representative is a member of the executive board, so it's not just me.
And you're in the Géant project as well.
Yeah.
So
But most of new projects, for example, InfraDev, we could not involve them exactly. Some of the projects, because of we are not ERIC.
But InfraDev, it really depends on the core topic, right?
Yeah.
So I suppose you refer to the individual support grants, which of course are just for infrastructures in the roadmap. But all the other InfraDevs, like concept studies, technical reports, I mean, is non-linked, is not linked to the roadmap. So you can compete in those goals.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
So So if you have no further questions, José Luis, I would invite you for the closing remarks. At least that is on my agenda.
Something real to do for José Luis.
We close the panel.
Close the session. We leave the podium and leave. Okay.
So we are reaching the end of the symposia, but before moving to the cocktail, I would like to give the floor to José Luis Martínez, the ESFRI chair, for the closing and concluding remarks, and then also to Eva Ortega Paino. She is the General Secretariat of Research in the Ministry of Science, Innovation and Universities. So José Luis, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here the full day, near my house, by the way. So it's very convenient. But really, I learned a lot because, I mean, all the things related with research infrastructure, ENEOS, and other things are always really now under construction, and it's really very informative to me. I will try to make a very short presentation, and I will start with something very simple to all of us. We have the same level of knowledge. What is ESFRI? Because we heard about the ESFRI a lot of time and what is going on. And well, I would like to be very clear. The ESFRI is a body, is a forum. So it's a meeting of people. It's not a legal entity. We have no budget. So this is a very big advantage because no budget means no people knocking the door. They said, where is my business? So I consider a big advantage. But ESFRI has a vision, and the vision is the people working in ESFRI, this is member state, associate country, and Commission, European Commission, we like to have a vision that we will equip Europe with the infrastructure to make the groundbreaking research. So really the cutting edge of the technology in order to really make the biggest progress possible in the research. This is our vision from ESFRI that we would like to implement. How we implement that in ESFRI, like ESFRI Forum? ESFRI is only a body, it's only a meeting of people from the member state in order to give a policy advice to the member state, associated country, and European Union. In that sense, I will continue with, yes, clearly the research infrastructure are financed maybe at the level of 98% from the member state. However, I will say the last 2%, who is coming sometimes, I will say in average, from the European Commission, is extremely important. Like a physicist or a chemist, I would say is the catalyzer. With a small amount of things, we produce quite a lot. And this is the 2% coming from the European Commission. And also a second part, you see, sometimes a little money in the proper time is extremely multiplier factor. And so the European Commission has a very good tools to finance the project in the early beginning, in the preparatory phase. If this project don't get this money in the preparatory phase, many of them will die. However, with this money, who maybe at the end of the day is a small percentage, is extremely important to survive the project and to finally arrive to a very strong and very, let's say, important research infrastructure in Europe. ESFRI was created in 2002, I think one of the very best elements of the European research area, and has been working from that continuously. So I said, I repeat, it's a central platform for the strategic thinking and collaboration between the member state and the Commission in order to develop the research infrastructure in Europe on the pan-European scale, not at the level of the national one. And of course, we want to contribute to the regional development and also the global development in Europe in very competitive global scenario. Just only a small slide about the composition. S3 is a body. I said there are two delegates for member state or associate country, an equal foot, and also people from the European Commission acting as secretariat of the S3. We have a chair, an executive board, and we are really in the work is done by 6 strategic working groups that at the end of the day you will remember the 6 group that has been all around in Oscar and different things: environment, health and food, digital, physics and engineering, energy, and social science and humanities. And we have also the implementation group, how to implement the research infrastructure, and very recently and very important, the monitoring group in order to monitor the performance of the well-established research infrastructure. As I said before, there are around 43 research infrastructure plus 22 projects, so in total we are around 68 research infrastructure, either already running or implemented, or in the phase of projects to be implemented. So this is about S3, but what is really the S3, let's say, work? So we have 3 elements I consider like the seals that they represent really S3. One is a process we do is the landscape analysis, the second one is the roadmap, and the third one I said before is the monitoring of the already existing project. So landscape analysis, I think, is a very important element of S3 that describe from time to time, now we are going to a periodicity of every 4 years, and describe what is really existing, what is really missing, and how we compare with the other areas in the global scale, like the Pacific Rim or America or China. And also, is very also in the present one that will be, I will explain later, that will present in a couple of weeks, is also how the new technology will impact the research infrastructure. And by new technology, I mean the artificial intelligence or the quantum technologies. We have the S3 roadmap. It's some type of bottom-up approach that the people apply to make a new research infrastructure in Europe at pan-European scale, and we have an evaluation process that I will just show you later in one slide. And finally, these research infrastructure are included in the so-called roadmap of future research infrastructure in Europe. And we have this monitoring process about how is the evaluation and the performance of the existing, already implemented research infrastructure. Respect to the landscape analysis, I said with the periodicity of 4 years, the new one is ready to be presented. Actually here there is a person who is working very much on it, Anna, and will be presented really probably at the end of this month and officially in the web, like the electronic part, but the real presentation will be done the first week of June, probably the 6th or 7th of June, I don't remember, during the presidency of Belgium, and we have quite a full activity during this week with the Research Infrastructure Conference, S3 Forum, and will be the presentation, the official presentation of the landscape analysis with the new novelties that I said include the impact of the new technologies, also the research infrastructure portfolio that will be presented, and all these things. Later on will be published and will be distributed to our, let's say, owners, so member state, associate countries, European Commission. The second element that I think characterizes S3 very much is the roadmap. The roadmap, I said, is a bottom-up process, so we open the call to the researchers in Europe. In principle, the logic is with the analysis of the landscape analysis, where indication of gaps and a strong point of weakness in Europe. With the monitoring of the present research infrastructure, the people has to look for a hole, a place where something interesting in research infrastructure could be a request. And this process will start probably the 8th of October, will be launching presentation of the project in Brussels, and will be the moment to start presentation of new projects for the roadmap 2026. This new project will follow a process of evaluation, which is really described here. We need at least 3 member states to support the candidature for new research infrastructure. We'll follow a process of eligibility with a process of scientific evaluation, a process of evaluation of the impact, and after that will be, let's say, the proposition of the new roadmap 2026. So that means how many research infrastructure projects from all of the presented one will be included in the new roadmap. And that, because of this process is quite long with all the evaluation, that will happen probably around middle of 2026 at least, it's very likely. In that moment, we'll present the new roadmap, Europe S3 2026. And I said already the monitoring of the research infrastructure is also very important because it has impact for the landscape analysis and also for where are the holes and the possibilities of new research infrastructure. But we have to perform this monitoring process in a continuous way of the existing research infrastructure under the S3 umbrella. So, priorities for this year, 2024, 2025, I will say that that's free. Clearly, to finish our landscape and present publicly and disseminate as much as possible, to launch a new roadmap for 2026 of the S3 research infrastructure, continues or finish all the S3 monitoring. We have to go to the process to monitor all the research infrastructure already operating under the S3 umbrella. And I will say we have also to position and better integrate the research infrastructure in ERA. And I will say 2 last points that I will develop later, and is related with this workshop, how S3 would like to make a broader range of the stakeholders and how we collaborate with EOS, and the other elements which are coming into the background, into the horizon, with the EDIC and the technology infrastructure, that I will really make a couple of slides at the end. Also, we are discussing already, because ERA is a rolling process, is already discussing the priorities for 25-27, and the new, let's say, political agenda of ERA. The activities will be divided in 2 parts. We call recurrent activities, that for us is our usual work. This means the landscape analysis, the S3 roadmap, and the stakeholder engagement, how we really collaborate as much as possible with the other activities like EOS, industrial cooperation, and so on. And the short-term activities. These short-term activities usually is coming from mandate, coming from the Competitive Council, this means from the Member State and the Commission, that asks S3 to do a report or a study, a position paper about different issues. For instance, we have in the pipeline about the financing and financing sustainability of the research infrastructure, international collaboration, the impact assessment of the S3 itself, and also how we could strengthen the legal entity of ERIC in order to be really more integrated in the research infrastructure ecosystem. And last but not least, it has been also discussed before in the panel before, about the resilience and the greening, we are more efficient in energy consumption in the research infrastructure, who at the end of the day will become more sustainable. So, respect to EOS, that was one of the discussion of really all the day there. So EOS, I will not repeat the things has been repeated very, very much during the today, but this federation of distributed system. The goal of EOS is to have access to all the data. The data has to be fair, and the idea behind is the data, very good data coming, in our case, from the research infrastructure can be reused, not only for the people who really in the beginning start to get the experiment, or there are other type of data is coming from general surveys of temperature, salinity, and things like that. All the data together in this database, to use as much as possible this data in order to get the maximum possible output with the same data and not repeat them again. So the nodes will provide entry point for the user to access to the full EOS Federation. But I would say from the point of view of the research infrastructure, at the end of the day, ESFRI representing some part of the research infrastructure, all of them, we consider that it's really very important that the research infrastructure is properly recognized inside the EOS governance structure. So we know that the governance of EOS is made by the so-called tripartite, so the European Commission, the EOS Association, and the EOS Steering Board, who is really the member state and associate country, and I said the EOS Association, who in principle represent all the users, all the researchers in Europe that want to use the data. And there in that part is very important the research infrastructure. And let's say from the point of view of ESFRI, it's very important that the research infrastructure are properly taken into account in the government decision of the EOS Association. So in that case, from the point of view of ESFRI, we have a so-called task force between ESFRI and EOS from the last at least 6 years, if I remember properly. And that means that we have a direct connection between EOS and ESFRI. We have people there representing ESFRI in the EOS, in this EOS task force. But the idea behind is we would like, with this kind of coordination, to reduce the fragmentation of the research of the data landscape in Europe by stimulating the connection between the research infrastructure ESFRI type and the EOS Federation. And, of course, assist and really collaborate that the data will be fair in the sense that can be reused later and be useful for a future research. One part of that, I will say, is Oscar has been presented. I will not really give much more information, but really, Oscar is a cluster, different cluster with the different research infrastructure, and most of them from ESFRI, that really collaborate and try to implement this kind of nodes of EOS data. But I will say from my side, like the ESFRI and the research infrastructure, there is still open question. And I will repeat that later. I think we are in the critical moment. Okay, everyone is telling always we are in the critical moment. But it's very clear to me that the next 6 to 18 months, many things will be set up. EOS, Framework Program 10, budget, new commission, and the budget for the Framework Program 10. And from that moment will be the implementation of that. But from here to the next, between 6 to 18 months, all these things will be decided and crystallized, and after that will be the implementation. So really, I continue to say, yes, it's a very critical moment that in the next 6 to 18 months, many things will be decided, and later will be that only we have to implement that, but will not be very easy to change. So, from the point of view of EOS and ESFRI, we have to define and develop the implementation model of such a federation system. It has to be, seems to be a very challenging model. So I think that one of the elements to the discussion is we will propose that the research infrastructure participate strongly in this governance, in the definition of the government process of the EOS. The point is, we always say that the idea of EOS is to reuse the data and to produce more for the European researcher. But how we will keep this sovereignty? It was a question this morning in the first panel about that, and it is a very, very important challenge. How we assure the sovereignty of this data who are really stored or used in EOS? It's not simple. And how finally here I repeat again, how the research infrastructure will be recognized, because for one side there are users, and because to the European EOS Association who represent the user. But from the other side are also provider of the data, one of the really more significant provider of data. So how this will be integrated and how the research infrastructure will be integrated in the governance of EOS is to be discussed. And finally, also about the financial resources, because if we want that the research infrastructure, ERIC or Euroforum research infrastructure, collaborate and have implementation of the EOS, will be necessary to have people devoted to that and probably budget related with that. And that has to be also, is also a message to the member state. The member state has to give the mandate to the research infrastructure, who at the end of the day belongs to the member state, that this is important for them. So, but if I have to make a summary of that, to me, all about the research infrastructure in relation with EOS is about recognition and rewarding. Recognition of how they offer data and how this recognition is also asked for the member state, and rewarding in the sense that at the end of the day that will cost budget, will cost money, and this has to be available. Finally, only a couple of slides about the two new elements which is coming in the horizon, in the galaxy, in the space. It's the EDIC and the technological infrastructure. And I think it's also important because all of them coming at the same time together and will set up a new scenario. The European Digital Infrastructure Consortium, equivalent to the EDIC, has been created by the DG Connect, and this is a legal status that really is a legal instrument available by the Commission to the member state under the umbrella of the so-called Digital Decade Policy Program 2030. So the idea behind is to speed up and simplify the implementation of the multi-country project in order to deliver new digital service. This I made very, very simple. So the EDIC are really clearly set up to provide new digital service to the member state of the European Union during the lifetime of implementation of the operation of the EDIC, that in principle is until 2030. Probably will be extended after that, but today is under the legal umbrella of the Digital Decade Policy Program 2030, and that's it. So it's set up by the decision of the European Commission, but with a group of member states where private entity could also be part of the EDIC, which is really different from the EDIC, where private entities are not allowed to be members of the consortium. So today, two EDIC has been already running, officially created. Is about the digital twins, and the second is about Alliance of Languages Technologies. But there are also another project in the pipeline has been officially requested, who is the European blockchain structure, and there are several under discussion at the different levels, still some of them informal, some of them quite formal, already in the process to make final presentation of the demand to become an EDIC. And one is related with the cybersecurity, the other is mobility and logistics, the other is related with the genome, 1 million genome, and impact about the public administration and digital or agri-food. Technology infrastructure, this is the other animal finally in the landscape. This part of the DG Research, but another branch of DG Research. I will come to that later. So the idea is that if we want to be sovereign and we have the reindustrialization of Europe, sometimes, many times, there are many barriers to industrial transformation in the European Union due to the insufficient investment in infrastructure for new technology. And there where the idea of create the technology infrastructure is coming. So in principle, there are facilities, equipment, capabilities, support service to develop, test, and at scale new technologies, and can be sector-specific or technology-focused. So let's say it will be only to support the full sector, for instance, aeronautic, or just to develop one technology, for instance, a new type of electrolyzer new technology in order to generate hydrogen from water, who today is very inefficient, so new technology to develop this kind of electrolyzer that is become more efficient. This technology infrastructure, I said, could be also public, semi-public, or private. It's really, it is under definition. And there maybe will be operated like non-profit organization, a technology research organization, technology university, can also be big industries, private entities who will run the technology infrastructure. With the papers already in discussion today. This is not yet fixed. It's under discussion, but all these things are under discussion. So I would say, to finish, we need to clarify very clear the definition of the EDIC, of the technology infrastructure, and the ERIC, because if we don't define very clearly, if we don't see the difference, the boundaries of the interfaces or the overlap will be a very big problem. And this problem will come from the point of view that either we over-dilute the research infrastructure, because let's say the research infrastructure will start to have, let's say, a start-up, in the sense, the technology part I will disconnect from the digital part I will disconnect from the research infrastructure in order to create this new entity. So at the end of the day, we over-dilute, but also we can have the risk to set up a very strained competition between research infrastructure, ERIC, technology infrastructure. Maybe for 5 years I will become technology infrastructure or EDIC because it's very convenient, and later I will come back to be an ERIC. So we have to clarify, because we don't have very clear definition, very clear boundaries, and very clear interfaces, and we avoid overlaps or strong overlaps, will be very, very difficult to, let's say, coexist. We need, and this is the part I commented before, the point with the three elements is need a lot of coherency, coordination at the national level and at the Commission level, because many of the responsibilities are usually in the Commission in different areas, different Director General, and even inside the Director General in different branches, but also at the national level, at the member state of the country, as also at different ministries. And it's sometimes we have to have a coordination body quite strong, otherwise will be quiet noise in the process. It's not very clear what is the lifetime of this new element, because for the ERIC it's very clear, usually between 30 to 50 years, because it's the lifetime of the research infrastructure. But for the ERIC, it's not very clear, because they have to provide services as soon as possible. And in principle, with the framework of this position paper from the Commission, it's until 2030. Later on, we will see. And for the technology infrastructure, it's under discussion. We don't know. So, and also, and finally, and it's particular for the ERIC and technology infrastructure, the business model is not yet very well defined. Will be paid by users, will be other method of financing, could be also a market distortion, in the particular case of the technology infrastructure, I would say, in the ERIC also. This has to be clarified as much as possible, but nevertheless, I would say it's an opportunity. So if we define the things properly and we set up very clear the boundary and the collaboration, will be a much more diverse ecosystem and will be in benefit all of us, but has to be done properly. And I just finished to thank you again for the organizer to give me the opportunity of give this last, let's say, summary of points from the outside. And it was a really very pleasant meeting, and it was a very interesting day. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear Director of the Instituto de Salud, Carlos III, dear friends, colleagues. It is a pleasure for me to be here today to close this symposium of research infrastructures, organized by Reach Europe project and hosted by the Institute of Health, Carlos III. First of all, I would like to especially thank the Institute, ISTI for us, for its willingness to host this event. I would also like to highlight the commendable work carried out by the Institute as a driving agent of excellent science in the field of health. An institute to which, in our country, we all turn our gaze during the COVID-19 pandemic, and an institute that knew how to respond to the high expectations that society placed on it, and that continues to respond to this day to them. Thank you very much for your continued work and for organizing this event. An event in which we must highlight the high participation of the scientific community, because there have been more than 100 attendees coming for 20 different countries. We have attendees coming from different institutions, such as the REACH Europe project, from the European Commission, and I would like especially to thank you, Patricia Postigo, for your relevant contribution, from ESFRI, from research funding ministries and agencies, and from European research infrastructures. And I would like also to highlight the presence of my former director, because I was part of one of the research infrastructures, BBMRI Eric, as a node director for this country. Hello, Jens, it's lovely to see you here. Thank you for coming to my country, to our country. And your presence is really significant for us as well. Thanks to all the RI community for participating in this symposium. In this brief closing, because I think it's late now, and I'm sure that you want to go to the reception, I would like simply to lay the comment on some of the conclusions and ideas that have emerged in the different sessions that have taken place today. The first session has contributed to understand how research infrastructures and IOSC are complementary and can work together for a better development of the open science. It has shown the added value of IOSC not only for research infrastructures, but also for researchers and for data producers. Moreover, in this session, we were given more details about the evolution of IOSC and the main challenges to have a fully operational IOSC. The second session has provided an overview on relevant research infrastructure projects for the implementations to open science. The speakers have been able to explain the role of their projects as a part of the European open science policy, the main challenge they face in implementing open science practices, and the main outputs their projects will provide to the European open science policy. Finally, the third session has shown the potential of the research infrastructures in making the European research area a reality. In addition, it has provided an overview on relevant research infrastructure projects in the implementation of the European research area. The speakers have shown the main challenges in their fields and how their projects' results will make a big difference. To conclude, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all the speakers, participants and organizers for the invaluable contributions to this symposium on the European research infrastructures. Throughout our discussions, we have delved into the remarkable advances, collaborative efforts, and immense potential that these infrastructures hold for driving innovation and scientific progress in a huge variety of fields. As we conclude this gathering, let us carry forward the spirit of collaboration, commitment to excellence, and the shared vision for a more connected and impactful research landscape in Europe and beyond. May the insights gained and connections forged here serve as a catalyst for future collaborations and breakthroughs, ultimately enriching the scientific community and benefit our society as a whole. Thank you very much.